Hello, everyone. Did you have a good 4th of July, I hope? We took a little bit of a road trip. We went up to Tombstone, Arizona, visited the OK Corral, and watched their gunfight reenactments. A little bit of old U.S. history road tripping. Yeah, my husband was particularly enthralled because he grew up watching, Westerns in Turkey. So to see it live was hilarious. So we've had a bit of an interesting week here. It's been a holiday trading week, of course. So haven't had much for full market days here this week. Let's go take a look at our NASDAQ first. We're going to start there. And I'm also going to get my trade station going while we're looking at that. So we, of course, have this lovely weekly megaphone going on here on the NASDAQ. Basically, the overall market is doing the same thing. By the way, for those of you watching the markets right now, we've got a little baby 2T in the NASDAQ here on the 500 tick. So our megaphone here is this action here. And as you can see, we're not really up at that, full upper pivot level quite yet. If we connect these highs, we still have actually a pretty decent way to go, that this can still kind of try to push up into that zone. That's why I've been a little bit more on the cautious side as far as larger time frame shorts go, just because even though we do have really good exhaustion in the overall market on monthly timeframes, and in particular a lot of individual stocks, there's still wiggle room. There's still that little bit of extra magnetism, if you will, where we can still go just a little bit higher and still push the boundaries a little bit more, trap a little bit more people, I suppose you could say. When we're looking at what's going on the daily charts here, you can see we're about at a 61.8% extension compared to that first impulse move off of our lows right about a month ago or so. And this is a really key pivot level here, really key point in time, because we're coming right up into essentially the third test of highs here. So you have a zone where it can either try to go into a longer range at this point, or it's going to break and then can go for that measured move there to there. Let me change my color of my pen so it's a little easier to see. It keeps defaulting to blue, or to black rather. But this is that key point where it decides, hey, is this going to be able to do that, or is it not? And exactly, Donna, it paused at 50%. So it also has that risk that it could be stunted. When this goes here and it pushes into that 61.8, there's a much easier chance for it to go fully to that 100%. Stops at 50%, the odds drop. They're not as favorable. So over holiday yesterday, we had, I don't know if we can see it as easily in the NASDAQ, but definitely in the Dow, where it was coming up into some pretty good resistance. Let me look at the tick charts here. We can see it here on the tick chart here. So we had a two-wave move into the high here. Of course, Nicole and I shorted here going into the holiday. Whoops, I always got to check my market hours. But we had that measured move here into the close. Of course, we had a little bit of a pullback when things opened back up. Then it went for a 2T. And so this is what we were seeing as we were going into today. So overnight, that 2T developed. So we already had the two-wave extension where if we look at the difference between these highs, 1, 2, 3, we have a shorter distance here. That's what increases the odds that it's going to try to hold a measured move here to here and have a harder time fully breaking to a higher high after that point. It did break to a higher high, but not by much. It was basically enough that it created a trap for the bulls, basically our lovely holiday bulls there. So it created that trap. That's what flipped things around here as we went into today. We had the 1, 2, 3 this morning, and then the widening up. So third low here, we're looking at this basically being an even bigger widening up zone now at this point, where we're going to probably see more of the back and forth action. I don't have a huge directional bias as we go into this afternoon. I think we're going to stay in scout mode throughout the rest of the day and even as we go into early next week. Because if we look at the, let me back up here just a little bit, 20,000 tick chart here. You can see that third pivot high here. Pretty even spacing on the corrections to start with here. So this is, well, it's basically the same thing that it's doing in reverse here intraday. So it had the 1, 2, 3, the widening up with the 3 highs versus the 1, 2, 3 down and the widening up with the 3 lows that we're seeing intraday. So this could easily play out within this zone here for a bit longer. Of course, ideally, if we were going to see this go higher, this would have been like a 61.8% extension of this move. And we would try to hold that momentum. We would try to get that momentum picking up again. So it's struggling here, which leads me to wonder if we could get a head and shoulders here at this point as we go into next week. I think that that has a good chance of forming as we head into next week. So that means that in the meantime, this could be really choppy. There's not a huge bias in this little congestion zone here. We basically came right back into the level where we broke out of. And we saw that in the Dow, we saw that in the S&Ps, and we saw that happening here in the NASDAQ as well. So 3 of the 4 major indices here. The Russell's been really interesting because I was talking with, what was it, Donna? Was it you that we were chatting about this the other day, where the Russell hasn't been following along with the overall market very well at all. It will be going up and the market's dropping and vice versa. So it's been kind of in its own little world, but it's been trading really well. It's not playing with the team, right? It's not being a team player. Let me show you guys what's going on with the Russell here. It's actually led to some hesitation on my part on a couple trades because I would see a buy in the Russell, a really nice buy, and the overall market would be looking weaker and I wouldn't take the buy, and then it would just go, it would just take off, and vice versa. And so it hadn't been playing well with the rest of the market. It's gotten a little bit more on the team here today, but that certainly has not been the point, the case over the last couple of weeks. We do have this 2T here. You can see as we went into today, it tried to do it here, right here, and then it repeated it here. So when you got that repetition, you have a momentum reversal. So a momentum reversal is essentially a 1, 2T after another. So it's 2 2Ts in a row, but the first one will hold closer support. It won't go to a lot of times bigger target levels. Has the 1, 2, 3 up. So this was a major reversal pattern overnight. 1, 2, 3 on the downside, and then we've got a megaphone. So it just hit the lower end of the megaphone. We were looking at it here earlier today, actually, on the short side, because it had just come up to the upper end. And so here was where it tested the lower end, and now we should see that megaphone break. It's not likely to, again, hold it at another point. When it gets up to, if it gets up to here, this is going to be your measured move, but there's a better chance that it's going to try to break out of that megaphone pattern at that point. I do think that that is a possibility. It can get there today, though. Like I said, it's not fully playing with the rest of the market. Question on that 2T I mentioned right as we were getting started. Let me post that quick. So I'll show you what that was. It was just a little baby right here. And it wasn't fully the higher high, so it was kind of a hybrid. But you can see that two-wave move again, just like we saw in the Russell. And it led to a little kind of two-wave move back here, right back into that zone where this broke higher. And that's your main target on a 2T. So things have gotten whippy here basically after around 10:45-ish. We're getting a lot whippier. We're getting some of these bigger flush type of moves and not as much of a bigger bias. There's not a larger time frame set up here. Obviously this is just a 15-second chart, but there's not really anything on the bigger time frames here. We've got good resistance from this morning, just from the breakdown zone right here. So it does have a good resistance level, but there wasn't really much of a short here. It was a two-wave trend exhaustion and then kind of just pushed a little bit, but nothing that would lead to a major reversal at that point, just a reactionary move off of that resistance. So still thinking chop your action as we go into the afternoon, maybe a little bit more of a bullish bias. Could maybe get a little bit of an inverse head and shoulders going, but I would really like to see that pull back one more time so that we have another low. I don't really like head and shoulders that break out of triangles because a lot of times there'll be a false break and then they'll turn around. And then they can do another low and then go back, but it's not as high probability for a setup. So you can see it's trickier as we go into the afternoon. Let me get our trade station up here. Let's see. We'll take a look at our bonds. Here's our ES. We'll flip on over to bonds here in just a second. I'll show you guys to the ES here first. So you can see it's been choppier action. We've got actually a megaphone forming right here too. Really good momentum on the downside. So that also can make it have issues when it tries to bounce. So after you get your first bounces here, as you can see the kind of widening up. It's like what we saw on the Russell, really. Let me show you that Russell again here in the background. There we go. So really similar. Here you can see the 1, 2, 3, the three highs. This turned around. You can see that same thing, 1, 2, 3, three highs, but it didn't quite make it up there. It kind of widened up a little bit, so it wasn't as pretty as the Russell one, but it still has all the same risks involved as far as being able to flush lower as we go into early next week, really. And let's change this over to bonds. Go look at the bonds. And I know Harvey's also been following wheat, so we'll take a look at the wheat too. I'll have that pull up over here. So weekly on bonds here, what you'll see is that we've got basically that measured move here. And we've had a little bit of that momentum shift here at highs. So bonds are really getting ready to do some flushing action at the highs. You got your three pivot highs here, drop down to a smaller time frame. We were looking at this earlier in the week. Come on, bonds, load for us. It's essentially going to be pretty close to the same pattern though. So you've got your sharp upside move, your shift, your three highs. Again, it didn't quite hit the high. So just like the S&P did on that larger time frame, bonds didn't quite hit the high. We've been looking for this pattern over the last couple of days, things like 2Ts and momentum reversals at the highs. Speaking of momentum reversal, Bill had a question on how do you know for sure when something is a momentum reversal when it doesn't really look perfect? So a lot of times when I'm looking at something for a momentum reversal, I'm basically watching this momentum shift. I want a strong move, basically your leg, and then I want a foot. Ideally, the foot is going to be quadrangle. It's going to have parallel levels on the highs and the lows. And that's going to lead to some of the stronger flush reversals. So this morning, the one that he was asking about was the Russell. Let me pull that Russell back up. I went and loaded the other chart on there. We'll pull that Russell back up here on this one. And so the Russell didn't have a perfect momentum reversal this morning, but it had all of the basic features. It had the spirit of the momentum reversal this morning right in here. So you can see how close that looks to what is going on the bonds right here. You had this steep move and then the shift in the momentum and then started to flush on the downside. And that is the gist of what we had this morning too. So we had that shift and then it flushed on the upside. So Russell actually did a little bit more than the bonds have done so far, but it's that spirit of that pattern. So what you're looking for a lot of times on a larger time frame chart is kind of back and forth, red, green, red, green, red, green, and this is kind of the start of it. And then it shifted a little bit more and then took off. So your basic start of your patterns right here. So Alan, we were talking about that. Remember the larger time frames when you get that back and forth action? So I can widen this up here. So see you've got the red, green, red, green, red, and then that starts the reversal. Now this did kind of like a momentum reversal plus because you can see it shifted a little bit here. So you've got your three lows. So even though we can't see the pivots fully on a 5-minute chart, you can still know there's a momentum reversal in there because of that sequencing. And then this went into basically a phoenix, kind of flushed a little bit, and then there's your push up. So the pattern is in there. Even when you don't see all of the swings, you can count the back and forth red and green on the larger time frames. Now, if we drop down to the smaller one, smaller time frame, you'll see it better. Well, here I'll show you the tick chart. So here's your first pivot, second pivot, third pivot, pretty close to the same, but you've got a megaphone going on too at the same time. So in this case, what happens is we don't have the full parallel levels going on. And when you've got those parallel levels, that's your strongest clue. When you've got levels that aren't quite parallel, you increase risk that you can get things like 2B patterns forming. So a little bit different pattern than what we saw on the 5-minute chart showing itself on the 200 tick chart. This was actually the flush on the 5-minute chart, and it was also the buy zone for a megaphone. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I know in our megaphone class, for those of you that are in League of Traders, we originally labeled this 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. But by popular demand, I've switched that so that you're actually counting full pivots, not just the counter pivots. So we're doing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And that's your buy trigger on a megaphone. So you've got that hybrid between the megaphone and the momentum reversal going on here. So things aren't always perfect. A lot of times it's just going with the basic idea, basic concept. We've got a little bit of 2T-ish action trying again here, by the way, on the ES and the NASDAQ. And again, it's not a perfect 2T. It's the spirit of it. Momentum kind of picked up a little bit more, so it's not going to be as solid of a setup. Let me show you quick. I know I've got some NASDAQ charts open here still. Oh, maybe I don't. Maybe I changed them all. Oh, it's because they're linked. Haha. Okay, hold on. Unlink it. Let's see, you can see on 100 tick. So what we're looking at right here is, see how that has that kind of that spirit of the 2T, but we don't have good trend placement for it. So it has that move up, second move up, slightly higher high. If this pattern was forming up here, it'd be a pretty great short. But the momentum picked up just a little bit here. Let me go down to a smaller time frame, you can see that better. So it's a resistance zone, but it's one that's not as strong. It's more likely to try to break it here. So trend placement is important. Here, since it held that previous high zone, the two waves served as good resistance, and it was only the second test of highs. So it could have gone into a longer trading range here. Here, it picks up momentum. That means that your 2T is not going to be as strong of a setup. It can still happen, but the probability is less because of the trend placement that we saw in that larger time frame. It's a good level for a target, though, if you happen to buy continuation moves. Let's see other markets. We go look at that wheat. So wheat had a really nice 2B type of action here a couple days ago. This is that pretty momentum shift that you want to look for. Nice two-wave move up. Notice right here, this looks exactly like what the Nasdaq's doing right now. This is a 400 tick on wheat. Let me go down a little smaller. So see here, it's the first main pull up, and then it has like that 2T type of action, but that second move up is a little bit faster. Actually, I might even go down to 100 tick to show it to you. Oops, that's a 50, but I'll move to 100. So you can see on the 50, see how it goes faster there? Right here. So that's that same zone that we've got just now on the NASDAQ. I'll make it smaller. So you can see how the forces of trend placement and momentum mean that you can see something that looks like a 2T, but when you go down and look at details here, and you look at the trend placement, where this is a major downtrend over here, this is a major downtrend over here, and then the momentum picks up on that second one. Makes it harder to go. This could have pulled back a little bit more, like the wheat did, but in this case it didn't. It just had like a little blurb. But this can now go to that second move up, but it's less likely to easily do a full move like this. It's more likely to try to come up and just kind of shift momentum because it went too fast for Phoenix. So it went with the same speed that 2Ts do, distance between the highs, shorter distance between these two highs. Phoenix will have measured distance. So it'll try to break over here. And it'll have that extra little push, that extra little move to the downside that kind of cleans things up a bit and then allows it to go for an easy measured move. So a lot of times this ends up being choppier. It's not as smooth of a move most of the time. So just some live education there that it presented us with. Okay, so what's now on wheat? Right now on wheat, gonna go back to some bigger time frames. We are still, we're basically like we are on the overall market, aren't we? You got your main moves up, your shift and momentum. So it's kind of that momentum reversal-ish, 2T-ish type of action going on. At some first support here from where that momentum shifted. But no real strong pattern in here. Could easily, still manage to push up here and then come back down. But it's just going to be something you have to play on the smaller time frames here because it's going to totally depend upon how momentum plays out now. Because this could go into an avalanche at this point. This could play out and go into a bigger 2T there. Let me go on to a larger time frame chart. Nope, not good placement for 2T on larger time frames. You're right at the upper end of that channel. Not quite there though, so it can still push a little bit up into there. Probably wouldn't do too much here for a little while. Maybe if it can push up into there, that could give a short, but you've got your 3 lows. So it's more likely that it could chop, go into like a phoenix. So essentially inverse head and shoulders for the third portion here, but that could take a while to develop. Might go a little faster, do 1, 2, 3. That would probably be the best case scenario here for wheat to try to recover would be to do a 1, 2, 3. That would bring it back up to this zone where you've got that momentum reversal-ish pattern here again, the 3 lows. So ideally, that's what we'd like to see. So I would not be too interested in shorting this, even if we do see something like a 2T. It'd be a scalp type of pattern. Probably be on like a daily or 240. So it could still be like a really short-term pattern, but I wouldn't expect it to give you like a really big drop. I would be more aiming for something like this. Let's see here. Let's go look at our Forex pairs. Euro dollar held that 2-wave high really well, came down into the channel, stalled, and now we've got a really nice breakdown. This is wave 3. Probably going to try to widen up here intraday, get more of the choppy back and forth action. That was a really nice breakdown this morning. I was not looking at the euro dollars this morning. That was beautiful time development. Look at that, you guys. There's your avalanche. There's the momentum reversal, avalanche, your flag base. Perfect time development here to here. So this is going to get choppy over the next couple days. Probably going to be a few days before you see a decent impulse move on the intraday charts again. Larger time frame, not really too excited one way or the other at this point. Dollar yen, of course, we've got our triangle. So the triangles will often flush one way, break the other for a more solid move. So something like this, for example, can break to the upside and then pull back to the downside and do a measured move like this. That would be a totally normal activity on the monthly time frame here. Triangle on the bigger time frame, not really seeing here. So we were talking last week how this was at a do or die point because it was that third low. So it had the larger move down and then the shift. So this became a do or die point. So if it was going to go and do a 2-wave measured move, it needed to go right here with only a little pause. And it couldn't do that. So now this can still go up even more here at that point, which could actually create that flush on the monthly time frame if it holds strong enough. Could get going, flush the upside, and then reverse back down to the downside on that monthly chart. That is what I will be watching for. Megaphone on the pound. So you're at support here on the megaphone, basically another do or die point. This one's getting pretty big. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It's coming up into 0.7. So 0.7 has a higher chance that it could try to break and end up pulling lower. So here's your do or die point on this one. But the odds increase that that can break without the pivot. Let's look at the weekly on here. And see, that would make sense on the weekly because that would be going for that next low on the weekly megaphone. See? So that analysis on the daily charts looks to hold on the weekly. So it's more likely to try to go back and pull back into this low. So I would not buy this pivot on the megaphone here on the daily point. Basically 0.7 is where you don't have as much odds that it's actually going to do much intraday. You might get a little bit of a bounce, but it has a much harder time sustaining any sort of a bounce, and it can fail much, much more easily. Highway to the danger zone. Oh, now we need a clip of that to play in the forum. Every time a zone of pain starts, that actually would be considered a zone of pain there on the the pound there. Weekly, man, the Swiss just has not been exciting for me at all lately. This feels like it wants to break here on the downside, and it could break really fast when it gets going because it's gotten so narrow that it could really give in and give a really fast move. Daily charts, though, there's nothing there. It came off the 2T back in May, and a nice follow through on the 2T, but I don't really want to buy too much here on this. It was a nice intraday setup, but I don't see anything on the larger time frame that would entice me to stay in this as a long easily. I think it's going to go more into choppiness, and like I said, that monthly and weekly just look like they have a better shot of breaking down. Could flush first to the upside before it breaks down, just because this has gotten so narrow. So when we start to see more of these blocky actions, that is indicative that you can get flushes one way or the other, like so it can flush to the upside and then break sharp to the downside. A lot of times when that happens, it will go like this. You'll have the block trading sideways, it'll kind of pop up, and then it will go straight back down, and you won't necessarily get another base here at the lows before it breaks down. A lot of times it can just go without really stalling too much. Yes, Donna, the zone of pain gets your earworm. Highway to the danger zone, that's the one that we're gonna have to play every time we're at a zone of pain level. What's going on this NASDAQ? We've got a little baby 2T again on like a 30-second chart. Interesting. We're still not at good location on the large time frames, but it is there. Here you can see it. Little baby 2T trying to form. 1, 2, 3 waves up. The 2 here are the main waves, and then this is the flush wave. But again, larger time frames, it makes sense that this can chop more because of what we looked at just a little bit ago. So we can get little baby 2Ts and things like that can flush down, go back up, flush down, go back up like that as this kind of moves here. So be really, really cautious here right now, you guys, as we go into the early part of this afternoon. JNUG and GLD. for Richard. Two-wave exhaustion, previous highs. Megaphone. So I still think this can still go and push a little higher. Yeah, I think this can still push higher. I know we're getting a correction here just from that previous high, but the momentum increased really nicely. I know we were going into that reverse split, so we've got the really nice increase in the momentum coming off the lower end of that channel. So I still think this can try to push more to the upside. GLD, two-wave measured move. We were looking at that as really strong resistance as we went into last week here. Gold longer term, I'm more bullish on too, just in general. And again, increased in momentum. So we can get corrections here that can still manage to go higher. So this could even go into like a base here and give us another shot on the upside. It can go into a larger 1, 2, 3 and still try to shoot higher. Let me go and look at the futures quick. Oh, and of course I've got oil up on my futures chart, not gold. Hold on. I need to get them their own dedicated charts. They're like sharing right now. I flip them back and forth. Let's see. So gold on the bigger time frames looks pretty good to hold here. I mean, it just looks like we're in a base. But the monthly has an inverse head and shoulders, and that's what's trying to pull this higher on the monthly time frame. It's a lot like what we saw happening a couple days ago, where the market hit a lower low. It kind of rounded off at the lows. Let me grab this chart here and show you. So here we've got this rounding off, kind of this inverse head and shoulders that happened here, trying to gain momentum. This is something that can still continue to gain momentum and actually go up even further with a pretty rapid move before it stalls as it comes back into this zone here from 2012. So really be cautious on the short side here on gold. And oil. I need more custom colors on my NinjaTrader to link charts. They only give you like so many. I'm like, but I want all the charts. I need more. I'm gonna have to see if there's a way to do that. How many charts do I have open? Oh, I don't know. I think I got like, what was it, 16, 17 windows on the one computer? Only lets you use like 11 colors to link. Let's see. Oil. So what we were watching on oil was coming down out of its own momentum shift the other day. Was this. So it had a really strong drop. I was looking for this to have that potential to do a 1, 2, 3. It didn't go at the spot it needed to go for a 1, 2, 3. So it has to go with more like a kneecap type of base, basically just around that length of time is it. And so now it's trying to go out to the next zone, which would be about here, here. This is closer to the next one. So we need to see, can it go at that point? If not, then it would be about here before it would have another shot. And I'd really like to see it try to go before that. Strong momentum here on this little pop here. So not really getting a short setup yet. The smaller time frames, that was kind of a little two-wave pull lower on that. Let's see if I got a 15-minute chart. It basically has a little bitty two-wave pullback here. That kind of shifted the momentum, led to the pop here today. So we don't have good momentum yet to give us a continuation on the downside. That can still develop, but I don't see anything here yet on the intraday charts that excites me for doing so. They're all actually looking like they could go higher this afternoon still. We've got two waves up intraday off of the midday lows, but they rounded. Let me show you. They had a pretty decent Phoenix actually. We'll show you the Phoenix right on here. So here's the Phoenix. The buy setup. So it went pretty close to measured move, and then it's right at the lower channel here for support. But notice it kind of shifted momentum here when it came into this support. So by shifting that momentum there, it makes it harder for this to go and just do a breakdown after it has a two-wave move up. Might go into a head and shoulders and still break down, but a lot of times this can even gain momentum again into the afternoon and still go higher. So I would definitely be a lot more cautious on the short side here right now. Have I ever tried putting any of my strategies into an algo? I have not. I've had dozens of people approach me to do so, but I've just never, I don't know, never really followed up on it and put the work into doing it. Not sure I could duplicate my reading. I don't know. I really don't know because as you guys know, I mean, those of you that when we are working with live, there's so many little details that come up And like, it's like, okay, this, but this, except this. And so, I mean, I think possibly things like 2Ts could be put into an algo. I mean, we could make exceptions where it's like, well, if this one is faster or, identifying the downtrend. I mean, I have friends that are really good programmers that do that sort of thing, but I've just never put the time into doing it. Actually, one of my friends, his dad was a kind of a bigwig on the floor years ago, a futures trader, and he's spent the last 20 years doing algorithmic trading for him and fund trading and doing all the programming. So he actually has approached me to do that. But I don't know, maybe someday. There's a lot of work going into that. I need more clones. Retirement plan. I am retired. What are you talking about? I retired when I was, what, 21, 22, maybe? That's the last time I quote unquote worked for the man. He was a cool guy. He was a hippie. Director at the Office of the State Archaeologist. So I'm doing this for a hobby. Well, I mean, forward focus and League of Traders. Yeah, that's basically hobby. But trading is my retirement. That's what I live for and love for, basically. I know you guys are basically just hanging out at my retirement center with me during the day. That's what you're doing. I also hang out at the animal shelter. That's my other my other hobby, and artwork, of course. So I just, spend my days doing stuff I love. We need a chef, no time to cook. Well, I cook, I bake. It's just sometimes I burn stuff. Uh, I know I set timers, but if I'm in a trade, then I ignore the timer and then bad things happen. Thankfully, a lot of ovens and toaster ovens now, we can put things on a timer. So more often things just get cold. You guys have anything you want me to take a look at here? Zen yoga. I did yoga, but I'm not allowed to do yoga anymore. I do Tai Chi now. September corn. Ooh, let's see here. Let's see if I've updated my futures contracts. Yep, looks like I did. Uh, I never trade corn, Harvey, so should be ZC, right? It's not loading. We'll have to give it a second. I know, right? Iowa girl doesn't trade corn. I don't trade wheat. I don't trade the grains, which is kind of funny because that's like very first introduction to the markets. My partner at the time got involved with futures trading grains, and that's how I ended up in the markets. Totally trading different stuff though. It looks pretty close to wheat, um, except it's closer to the upper end of the channel. Basically the same thing applies. I think that this could go for something like a 1, 2, 3. Try to break out of that channel. Really good resistance here. So if as long as it chops here, then the odds of that trying to break are better. Intraday, same thing again. We do have that slightly higher high going on, but this could still pull back and shift enough that because of the trend placement, it could break out more. Be kind of interesting. You're going to have to watch the political action on this. That's actually part of why I don't trade grains, is it relies so heavily on politics. And so many things can shift it that are not as predictable. Weather, for example, weather and politics, big movers on grain. And you can see, just look at this. I mean, you got your two-wave move, zoom, got kind of your momentum reversal, two waves up. So it holds your patterns, but when it moves fast. So two waves, goes into an avalanche, shifts momentum, pretty nice pop, but doesn't go for wave two. Breakdown. So it trades pretty well as far as technicals go, but that's about it. Moves fast. And it moves up and down fast too. So up, down. So I don't trade markets that trade like this very often. Oh, how do I set up my scanner and TradeStation? Oh my gosh, Richard, I did that so long ago, I do not remember. Um, Basically, I create my own lists a lot of times. So I put markets on here that I like to trade. And so I create my own list that I watch. And then I just adjust them. This is, again, those of you that are new, this isn't my trading computer. This is just my teaching one. So my trading computer actually has a lot more things listed on it. But you can load, any of the main markets in here. You can load your like your NASDAQ 100, anything, and then you can customize them any way you want. And in here you can add like insert label rows. So you can label them, for example, it's like your Forex or whatever you want to label. So you can remember when something applies to something, or you can create different tabs that refer to different things. So you can say your long watch list, your short watch list, long-term position trade list, for example. You can do them that way. And then there's also, of course, built-in scanners. Let's see if I have it on here. Yep, here you go. So you can also do your built-ins with your hot list. So you can scan for different things using your hot list as well. So if you're looking for gap plays, for example, you can look at your one-day gainers. You can look at gap up pre-market. You can look at like gap up basing at highs. See what Roku is up to. So Roku held that momentum shift, but then it shifted again. So this is looking like it's going to try to pull back up and even can retest those previous highs. So you've got your 2-wave measured move on the daily on Roku. So this looks like it's going to try to pull back up in there again and break 100 again. But those are the main ways that I use scans on TradeStation. I know there's a lot of like customized scanning things out there. I really haven't used them in years. I just do a lot more manual scanning. TC2000 still probably the favorite among traders that I know. Trade Ideas is another one. That's another really good one. Those would be the two that I would go to if you want scans that are customized or easily customizable. I just use the ones that are already built in, Richard, for the scans that are on TradeStation. I don't have any customized ones on here. Again, it goes down to spending more time doing stuff, I suppose. Get in routines. I've been trading futures a lot more too, so I haven't been trading stocks as much. Is there a reason I'm trading futures more? Not really. I kind of, go in cycles. Sometimes I like to trade stocks more, sometimes trade futures more. Since we're doing League of Traders, so I've been doing a lot more futures just because it's markets that I can have up all the time, and it's something everybody else tends to be looking at too. So it's a little bit easier. There's not really much difference though as far as activity goes. Both markets, they're all really good. Forex is a great market too. No, I don't trade options. That's the one market I've never really gotten into. And people have tried to convince me over and over and over again over the years. But again, so many other things I'm doing, it's adding more time to, you've got to put aside the time to learn them. I've seen a lot of people lose a lot of money on options too, so I don't think it's like the holy grail of reducing risk. Options became more popular after the pattern day trader rule came into effect. We saw a surge in options traders after that point. All right, you guys, measured move here on the NASDAQ. I know I know enough about options really that I could get myself into more trouble. um, I had to learn them to pass my Series 3, but that was like it. NASDAQ measured move, let me show you that here. So here's our measured move right here. That's what we're looking at right now. Again, more caution on the short side here as we go into the afternoon. We're still dealing with that pattern that I was showing you guys earlier, which is right here where we've got that measured move, but it can wiggle around up here still. And notice how it performed here. It basically has gone back and forth. Hasn't had like a really smooth trend. A lot of choppiness. It's been steady though, steady into the measured move. Let's see, did I get everybody's questions or did I miss any? Good to go. Okay. All right, you guys. Well, I'll still be hanging out in the forum the rest of the day. Just kind of chilling, see if anything does develop here. Again, measured moves, so we're looking a little bit on the shorter side, but cautiously so. Those of you that have taken the Advanced Trade Management Bootcamp, please employ those strategies as you go into the afternoon on this stuff. Good job. And then Donna just brings that up. Nice. Perfect. All right, you guys, have a wonderful rest of the day and enjoy your weekend. I will have the replay up for this as soon as possible, so you can watch it over on YouTube, and I'll post it in the forum too as soon as it is up as well.